Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Welcome back once again to our ever ongoing series on the glories of our most beloved Sri Vrindavan Dham. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pashtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Ghoravani Pacharine Vishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarane. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So we are continuing with our mini-series on the binding rope of spotless love, and this will be part 6. In part 5, we concluded with Krishna pulling down the twin Arjun trees, thus freeing Nalakuvera and Manigriva from what you could say was the benevolent curse of Narada Muni, and how Krishna consoled his mother Yashoda after she lamented for tying him up. We concluded with a really beautiful verse from Srimad Bhagavatam 10:11:34. Tada Yashoda rohin yav ekamsa katam astite reja Krishna rama bhayam tat kata shrava notsuke. Quote, thus hearing about the pastimes of Krishna and Balaram with great pleasure, Mother Yashoda and Rohini, so as not to be separated from Krishna and Balaram, even for a moment, got up with them on one bullock cart. In this situation, they all looked very beautiful. So one might say that's the conclusion of Damodar Leela, but it's actually not. One thing is very clear from studying the scriptures. This was not the end of Krishna's stealing butter pastimes. In Sanskrit, butter is called makhan. Krishna's fondness for stealing butter persisted for as long as he was a small child in Braja. Srila Prabhupada writes in his purport to Srimad Bhagavatam 1:10:19, quote, Krishna is very famous amongst his pure devotees as Makhan Chor. Chor means thief. He used to steal butter from the houses of neighbors in Vrindavan in his early age. Since then, Prabhupada writes, he's famous as a thief. His many ongoing pastimes of stealing butter are described in my research, I found. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 8, along with Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's Sarata Dharshini commentary on that chapter. He describes many of Krishna's butter pastimes. Also, they're described in Ananda Vrindavan Champu, Chapter 5, Gopal Champu, Purva Champu, Chapter 7, and I also found some in Garga Samhita, Canto 1, Chapter 17, so lots of butter pastimes. There's one very nice pastime in those scriptures wherein Mother Yashoda actually tricked Krishna into admitting he had stolen butter. That's a good one. Catching child Krishna eating butter one time, she said, "So Lala, you have stolen it, haven't you?" But Krishna initially professed his innocence, saying, it couldn't have been, Mother, for you sent me to Madhuvan to herd the cows. I left early this morning and have just now returned in the setting sun. The cows and my friends are my witnesses. I've been away in Madhuvan all day. How can you accuse me like this? Then Krishna started crying. And he said, I return tired and hungry, Maya, and you call me a thief? How can you be so cruel? Am I no longer your son? If not, I will not live here any longer. So we're churning this rasa, this vatsalya rasa of, parental love between mother and son and mother. So Yashoda's heart softened, and she said, remember, this was a trick on her part. She said, Lala, perhaps I am mistaken. Maybe the neighbor saw someone else. Let's see. Then she put her face in her palms like this, to hide her So she put her face in her palms and she cried, "Oh, my son, I can see now. I was wrong. I am so sorry. You know, the neighbors complained. They swore upon their cows that you spent all day terrorizing their homes by breaking their yogurt pots, eating the contents, and sharing it all with monkeys. But I must have been wrong. How can I believe them? I must believe you." So seeing his mother's crying, Krishna's heart softened. And placing one hand on her arm, he pleaded, "Mother, don't cry. Okay, I confess. I stole the butter, but please don't cry." So at that point, Yashoda, she looked at her son through her fingers and she cried even louder. "Oh, son, forgive me. Oh, innocent one. I wrongly accused you. It's as you say. You were in Madhavan. You couldn't have done it." So now Krishna is getting really emotional. He squeezed his mother's arm. He's crying, "You are not to blame, Maya. I did do it. I did. Please stop crying." She replied, "No, you didn't, Lala." Krishna insisted, "Maya, yes, I did." "No, you couldn't have done it," Yashoda replied. It's described barely able to control her laughter. And once again, Krishna said, "Yes, I did." But now, he detected something funny in his mother's voice. And repeatedly tugging at her hands, he finally uncovered her, it's described, radiant, smiling face. And he then realized she had tricked him. So then Mother Yashoda looked at Krishna with wide open eyes and said once more with a smile, "No, you didn't." And then laughing, she threw her arms around her son. It's described covering his now smiling, tear-stained face with kisses. This is really deep Vatsalya Ras. Covering his now smiling, tear-stained face with kisses. So Krishna, he affectionately stroked his mother's hair, but still determined, how could you say, not to be outdone, even after having been exposed as a thief. He kissed Yashoda's cheek and whispered in her ear saying, "Yes, I did." Yes, I did. Oh, Damodar Maski. So now there's another nice pastime described by Kavikarnapura in Ananda Vrindavan Champu. And I found that it's also mentioned in verse form by Srila Rupa Goswami in his Padyavali. It's text 142. And this pastime begins when Krishna once reached into an open container full of butter. And while doing so, he saw his own reflection in a shiny marble column nearby. He kind of looked over and he saw his own reflection. Now, thinking it to be another boy who had come upon the scene of his naughtiness, he blurted out, "Oh, dear brother, if you don't tell my mother, I will share some of this butter with you. We can enjoy it together. But you must be quiet, otherwise she might catch us." Now, overhearing Krishna's whispers from a nearby hiding place, Mother Yashoda could barely keep from laughing out loud. Then, as if she were ignorant of what was going on, she innocently came before her son. The acharyas say, caught red-handed, Krishna's propensity to lie tried to rescue his propensity to steal. That's really beautiful. Krishna's propensity to lie tried to tried to rescue his propensity to steal. And pointing to his own reflection, he said, "Mother, you're just in time. This greedy boy came here to steal your butter. But I forbade him. But he ignored me. When I got angry with him, he also got angry with me." Then shaking his head in a mischievous way, with a sly smile on his lips, Krishna went on, "He may be greedy for butter, Maya, but I'm not greedy for butter." That's a nice sweet pastime. He may be. You see him? He's greedy for, but I'm not greedy for butter, so you have to chastise him. Vatsalya rasa ki. Now in Ananda Vrindavan Champu, chapter 5, it's described that when Krishna was a little older, still a child, but a little older, Mother Yashoda was doing some housework. And she hadn't seen or heard of Krishna for some time. So she became a little worried. So she stopped her household duties and she called out, Lala, oh Lala, where are you, darling? What are you doing? Now, in fact, Krishna was in the process of stealing some butter, makan, from her storeroom of milk products. And afraid that he would very quickly be caught, he just ran out to where Mother Yashoda was, and raising his hand, his right hand, with a worried look on his face, he said, Maya, my hand was burning from the heat caused by the ruby bangles you placed on my wrist. What an excuse. Maya, my hand was burning from the heat caused by the ruby bangles you placed on my wrist. So I stuck it in a pot of butter to relieve the burning pain. To relieve that burning pain from the butter. But don't worry, Maya, the pain's not so bad now. So Mother Yashoda smiled and she said, oh dear, that sounds terrible. My dear son, come sit on my lap at once and show me the burns on your hand. So Krishna came and sat on Mother Yashoda's lap, and Mother Yashoda looked at Krishna's wrist, and kissing it, she said, oh, just see, yes, your wrist is burned. My poor baby, I will remove those ruby bangles so they will no longer give you any pain. Now it's interesting here, we're analyzing Vatsalya Ras, parenthood. Generally when Mother Yashoda would catch Krishna in the act of stealing, she would chastise him. As we know, during this month of Damodar, she chased him with a stick and tied him to a mortar. So generally she would chastise him. But the acharyas say, actually, not so much for the loss of butter, but rather to fulfill her parental duty of training him to be honest and law-abiding. I thought that was really interesting. Not for the loss of butter, but to fulfill her parental duty of training him to be honest and law-abiding. That little thief. Makanchor. But not wanting to make Krishna feel bad that day, she said, "O son, our entire stock of butter, ghee, and yogurt are now all for you." So at that point, Krishna opened his eyes really wide and he broke into a broad smile. Then he said, "Maya, it's all mine?" And Yashoda replied, "Yes, dear, all of it." So again, this is a rare instance where you could say Krishna escaped the anger of his mother for his constant stealing of his favorite milk product, butter. Favorite milk. Lots of milk products amongst the cowherds, yogurt, butter, cheese. But butter was always Krishna's favorite. One acharya has written, may we always hear, speak about, and remember Krishna's stealing. It doesn't cause any distress, it just increases our love, because he's so adorable. And that acharya goes on, he says, he writes, seeing a pot of butter in the distance, baby Keshava quickly crawled there, anxiously turning his face in all directions out of fear of his mother. I worship these childhood pastimes of the Lord. Hare Krishna. Kartik ki, Damodar Mas ki, Mother Yashoda ki, Lord Damodar ki. Okay, one last pastime. There's so many, unlimited actually. This is a very sweet one. And Acharya has written that, how did he put it? Just as pouring ghee on a fire feeds its flames, Krishna's stealing only intensified his desire for more butter, until he thought that anything that was of a yellow-white color, like the moon for instance, was made of butter. So one full moon night, Mother Yashoda was sitting outside chatting with some elderly gopis while Krishna was playing nearby. And ever so often, because Krishna had this propensity, he loved butter, so anything was yellow-white, he was like looking at it. So he was looking at the moon with longing eyes. Now, wanting to make sure Krishna was okay, Mother Yashoda sent two of her servants to look after him. And as the ladies sat down next to him, they said, what would you like, dear Krishna? Would you like some condensed milk? So Krishna looked at them and he firmly replied, no. So another gopi said, then Lala, would you like some nice creamy yogurt? And again Krishna shook his head, he said, no. Another gopi said, how about some curd? And as you can imagine, Krishna's answer was still no. So all those gopis, it's so sweet, in unison, they said, Lala, then what do you want? So Krishna said emphatically, I want freshly churned makan. I want freshly churned butter. So you may remember in a previous lecture we mentioned that although there was always, so many milk products in the home of Nanda and Yashoda, Krishna was interested only in consuming butter. And we explained, butter is described by the acharyas. Butter is the sum, complete shara, essence of yogurt, because in those days ladies would churn the yogurt to get the butter. So butter is the sum, complete shara, essence of yogurt. Therefore, in Vedic cuisine, butter is often referred to as shamshara, the essence of all taste. Now, Krishna is the connoisseur of all rasas, so if butter is the essence of all taste, he loves that butter. Rasika Rai, the king of enjoying. So at this point, one of the gopis said, then, if you want butter, I will go into the house right now and bring you a whole tray of your mother's most delicious makan, butter. But Krishna stopped her with another emphatic no. So confused, the gopi said, but whose butter do you want then? And Krishna replied, no one's. Then pointing to the moon, he added, I want that butter. Because the moon is, yellow-white, so he's this little child, and he's just wanting butter. Anything that's yellow-white, he thinks it's butter. He pointed to the moon. I want that butter. So naturally all the gopis laughed, and they said, little boy, this is not churned butter. This is, this is actually a royal white swan. You kind of trick him. This is a royal white swan gliding across the lake of the sky. Oh my gosh, every lecture is so much poetry. What is the use of a bowman's arrow unless it pierces the heart of his enemy? What is the use of poetry unless it pierces the heart and brings out transcendental emotions of prema, love for Radha and Krishna? They said it's a royal white swan gliding across the lake of the sky. But whatever it was, butter or not, Krishna wanted that moon. So he said, then give me that royal swan so I can play with it. Catch it quickly before it swims away. Then working himself into a frenzy, Krishna kicked his feet and shouted, get it now. Now hearing Krishna's tantrum, transcendental tantrum, some other gopis came and they tried to pacify him. They said, oh child, do not cry. Those gopis have told you a lie. That's not a royal swan, but the moon in the sky. The moon is called Chandra. Chandra. So undaunted, Krishna replied, then give me that Chandra so I can play with it. I want it now, right now, get it. So by now Krishna's, antics had become too much for the gopis to handle, so they brought him to his mother Yashoda. And now Krishna was crying. He wanted that moon, that Chandra, that makan. So he's crying, and holding her crying son on her lap, Mother Yashoda spoke very sweetly into his ear. She said, "My dear one, what you said at first was correct. That moon is actually freshly churned butter. But I cannot give it to you. The moon may look very tasty," she said, "but actually it has deadly poison spots on it. So therefore no one can eat it." So Krishna calmed down and he said, "Maya, why are there poison spots on the moon?" So Mother Yashoda replied, "Lala, there is an ocean of milk in the universe." Now, before she finished that sentence, Krishna interrupted. She said, "There's an ocean of milk in the universe," but she didn't finish because Krishna interrupted. And he said, "Maya, how many cows does it take to get enough milk for an ocean?" Smart boy. There's an ocean of milk. He said, "How many cows does it take to make an ocean of milk?" So Mother Yashoda, she just laughed and said, "Lala, the milk ocean was not made by cows." So Krishna looked into his mother's eyes and he said, "Maya, how can that be? How can there be milk without cows?" So Yashoda answered, "Lala, the one who gave cows the ability to transform grass into milk can also make milk without cows." Nice discussion they're having. The one who gave cows the ability to transform grass into milk can also make milk without cows. So at this point, little Krishna seemed satisfied, but he was still curious. So he inquired, "Maya, who's that person?" So Yashoda replied, I have heard, he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They say he's all-pervading. He's invisible to material eyes, and therefore you and I, Lala, cannot see him." Wow. So Krishna again looked at his mother, this time with a slight smile, and he said, "Mother, is everything you're telling me true?" So rather than defend herself, it's described, Mother Yashoda cited scripture. "Listen," she said, "long, long ago, the demigods and the demons churned the ocean of milk. Mount Mandara was the churning rod, and the king of serpents, Vashuki, was the churning rope. The demigods and demons pulled on the opposite ends of Vashuki like a churning rod." And Krishna spoke up, he said, "Maya, did they churn like you and the other ladies do when you're making me makan?" So Yashoda replied, "Oh yes, but their churning, Lala, produced a deadly poison." So Krishna said, "Maya," this is so interesting, isn't it? "Maya, how can churning milk produce poison? I thought poison came from snakes." So Mother Yashoda thought for a moment and she said, "Lala, poison does come from snakes, but it came from milk first. Mahadev drank the poison to save the universe. When some drops of the poison seeped through his fingers, the snakes drank it. That's why they are now poisonous." So at this point, little Krishna, he kind of shook his head in wonder. And Mother Yashoda continued, "The moon was also born from the churning of the milk ocean. But it too was touched by drops of poison, which we now see as marks on the moon." Can you see them? So Krishna, innocently, he looked up at the moon. He said, "Maya, I see them. I see them." So Mother Yashoda concluded, that is why we cannot eat butter from the moon. It's poisonous. But Lala, we can eat Gokula butter. Gokula butter. Butter churned by me and my maidservants here in Gokula. That we can eat. Now please take my freshly churned butter instead of the moon." So Krishna nodded in agreement, but he immediately, it had been a long discussion, he immediately started falling asleep. He actually yawned to show that he was very sleepy. So right at that moment, Mother Yashoda carried Krishna into the palace at Nandagaon, and even before she could lay him down on the bed in his room, he'd already fallen fast asleep in her arms. And what was he doing? The acharyas say he was dreaming about an ocean of milk. I wish I could dream like that, an ocean of milk. So the next morning, when will that day be ours? The next morning, Mother Yashoda, she woke up Krishna with a tray full of butter, yogurt, and other treats, saying, Lala, you just take what you like. But at that point, Krishna crossed his arms like that, and he looked at his mother and he said, I will not eat anything. Last night I was hungry, but instead of feeding me, you put me to sleep with a story about poison on the moon. I was hungry all night, so why should I eat your food now? So Mother Yashoda put the tray down and she replied with a smile, Lala, if you were hungry all night, who stole the butter from the storeroom last night? Who stole the butter from the storeroom last night? So, understanding that his theft had, could you say, been discovered and that his false accusation had been exposed, Krishna, he looked away, unable to look at Mother Yashoda. Then he turned around and he leapt on her and he threw his arms around her neck. The acharyas say that Krishna embraced his mother as she lovingly held his butter-soft body of condensed bliss. Here we go, churning the bhakti in the heart. Krishna embraced his mother as she lovingly held his butter-soft body of condensed bliss. And someone may ask you, who is Krishna? He has a butter-soft body of condensed bliss. What? And she laughed as he whispered in her ear, Maya, I never steal butter, especially not yours. So one devotee has written, O Gopal, all your pastimes are sweet, but your muck chore pastimes are especially relishable due to the buttery fingerprints you leave on them after stealing your mother's freshly churned butter. May that divine form of yours that thrills at the sound of the churning rod and stealthily enters Mother Yashoda's kitchen to steal a handful of fresh butter protect us all at all times. Hare Krishna. Prabhu's, this is just nectar. Krishna's muckin pastime, muckin chore pastimes. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share these pastimes as we find them in the scriptures I mentioned earlier of our great acharyas. So we'll finish here and let's see. I'll do some more research if there's more pastimes connected to Dhamma-dharmas. It's almost over. We'll see. I'll see you next Friday. So thank you for watching. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Shishi Gauranitai ki, Shishi Krishna Balaram ki, Shishi Radhashama Sundar ki, Brindavaneshwari Shrimati Radharani ki, Nanda Yashoda ki, Damodar Lord Damodar Mukanshor ki, Mayapur Dham ki, Shishi Gauranitai ki, Shri Krishna Sankirtan Yagya ki, Hare Krishna Mahamantra ki, back home, back to Godhead ki, Nitai Gaur Premanandi, Jai Jai Sisi Radhe Sham. Glories